Hi, and welcome to the third installment of a series that we're hoping to work on. Why do bad things happen to good people? So I want to begin this week with discussing with you the Gemara that appears in Masechet Shabbat. It begins as follows: Shabbat Nundalet. Ama Rav Ami, Ein mita belo chet ve'ein yisurin belo avon. It is Rav Ami's opinion that all suffering and all death in this world is caused by sin. Fascinating assumption, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, that all suffering is caused by sin, because Hashem is good, Hashem is kind, as we spoke about last week. If Hashem is kind and good, then why in the world would he bring suffering into the world? It must be that there's a divine justice at play, and therefore all suffering must be caused by sin. And he quotes psukim from Yechezkel, right? Hanefesh hachotet hitamut, ben lo yisa avon ha'av. Right, the one who sins shall die. Suffering comes into the world is through chataim, and therefore it would make sense, according to Rav Ami, that if you see someone suffering, you can know they've obviously done something wrong to deserve that suffering. And the Gemara goes through a list, right? Why did Adam Harishon die? The answer is because he did one mitzvah to keep and he didn't do it. And what about Moshe and Aaron? Famously, because of the Chet Mea Meriva, Ya no hemanti bi. But then finally the Gemara pushes back a bit against Rav Ami in a way that he can't defend himself. Quotes a Braita that says, Meitivei, Arba metu b'ito shel nachash. 4 people died simply because of the snake, namely Chet Adam Rishon, the first sin. Ve'eluhen, famously, Binyamin, Amram, Yishai, v'Kalev ben David. 4 people never committed any sins in their lives, and yet still died. Why did they die? Because of the snake, because of the Chet Adam Rishon, because death had been brought into the world, because suffering had been brought into the world. Think about again, what were the punishments for the Chet Adam Rishon? Number 1. The snake was punished, but in terms of humanity, the Chava was punished with pain at childbirth, and Adam was punished with having to work hard to survive. Right? Right? Through the sweat of your brow, you will eat bread. Life is going to be tough, and therefore, it seems that that there is pain in this world even without suffering, and that is the maskan of the Gemara. That's the conclusion of the Gemara. Shema mina yesh mita belo chet v'yesh yisurin belo avon. The truth is, in the end, if we think about it, we know that there is death without chet, and there is suffering without avon. The question is, what is the place? What is the place of Rabbi Ami's Havamina? How important is it to identify, to appreciate Rav Ami's Havamina? And so if we take a look, number 1, it's important that we reject Rav Ami. That means if you see someone suffering, you don't know why they're suffering. Maybe they're suffering even though they did nothing wrong. That is to say, you can never judge anyone based on their suffering. And this is exactly what the Gemara we quoted last week in Bava Metzia says, that Bava Metzia Nun Chet. Right? If you see Tanu Rabbanan, Lo ta'anu ish tamito, do not cause other people to suffer. Im yu yusrin ba'in alav, im ayu chalaim ba'in alav, shaya mekaveret banav. If he was burying his children, al yomar keder shamar lo rav le'Iyov. Don't be like the friends of Iyov. Don't say, "Oh, I know why you're suffering. It must be because you've done something terrible." No, this is incorrect. We reject Rav Ami. It can't be known why someone is suffering, and therefore it is wrong to judge someone based on their suffering. On the other hand, what is the place of Rav Ami's Havamina? Why is it recorded in the Gemara? Is it just there so we can reject it? Or is there something important that we can learn from it, even if it's not always true? So to speak, Rav Ami sounds like he's true 90% of the time. All right, we can go methodologically here. When the Gemara rejects Rav Ami, what is it doing? Is it saying Rav Ami is wrong? Because you see the 4 people that that never sinned and yet died? Or are we saying Rav Ami is generally right, but there are exceptions? There are only 4 people that died because of the Nachash, but everyone else is suffering because of their own sins. There's a tension how much of Rav Ami is rejected in the Maskana. And therefore, if we take a look in the Gemara in Brachot, I'd like to delve into a bit more this week. Let's take a look at it. Brachot daf Amud Aleph. Amar Rava v'iteimer Rav Chisda. Im ro'eh adam yisurin ba'in alav. If a person, we're not talking about other people, if you see suffering coming onto yourself, you should check yourself out. You should see if you're doing chata'im. Pishpesh v'lo matzah yitleh bebitul Torah. If you search in your deeds but you don't find anything wrong, then you should think maybe it's bitul Torah. Ve'im tala v'lo matzah biyadua sheyisurin shel ahava hem. Then you should know that it's yisurin shel ahava. So to speak, there are 3 levels. Number 1, maybe you did something wrong. Number 2, maybe it was bitul Torah. And number 3, maybe it's none of the above, and it's something called yisurin shel ahava. So there are a few important questions to ask in this Gemara. Number 1, we've already answered, which is number 1 is, why should you assume you did anything wrong? Maybe you didn't do anything wrong. The answer is no. Rav Ami is correct on some level, some of the time, maybe most of the time. And therefore, if bad things happen, you should reflect and you should think, maybe I did something wrong. That's not how we treat others. But for ourselves, that's what we should do. Now the question is, question number 2 is, what does it mean if you didn't find anything wrong with yourself, you should hang it on bitul Torah? What does that mean? Okay. And question number 3 is, what is Yisurin Shel Ahava? And why in the world would Hashem bring it upon us? How does it make any sense? The concept of Yisurin Shel Ahava. Hashem loves us. Hashem is good. Hashem wants. Why in the world would He bring pain onto the world, even though those individuals did nothing wrong? It seems an absolute pella, and it seems ironically named Yisurin Shel Ahava, right? Suffering of love. What does that mean? Okay, so those are our 2 remaining questions. Number 1, if I know haven't done anything wrong, I've looked through my life and I haven't found anything, what does it mean go to bitul Torah? And number 2 of our remaining questions is, what is Yisurin Shel Ahava? So if you look at the Ben Yehoiada on the spot, the Ben Ish Chai, he tells us 3 interesting options about what bitul Torah might be. So he asked the question that we asked, right? How is it possible to say there's nothing wrong with me, I haven't done any chata'im, but maybe there is bitul Torah? Isn't bitul Torah one of the most serious sins? And so he says maybe. So he explains as follows: we all have a responsibility to learn as much as possible. Now, it's true that we're not supposed to do what Rosh Baruch did, right? It's incorrect for people to only learn Torah. It's not considered bitul Torah to do anything but learning. But there is a balance to be found, which is you need to learn as much as you can and take care of your family and take care of whatever else you need to do. And sometimes it's very difficult to find the right balance. Along comes the Gemara and says, maybe you need to recalibrate that balance. Suggest to the Ben Yehoiada, maybe we have a responsibility. Hashem is telling us a message that you have miscalibrated your life. You aren't spending enough time learning. You are going out too much to work, and you're not finding enough time to learn. And therefore, it's not a chait that you've done. It's a miscalculation. And that is what the Yisurin is coming to tell us. Okay, that's option number 1. Option number 2 in the Ben Yehoiada is as follows. He says that there's a concept in halacha which is mitzvah she'efshar l'kayim al yedei acherim. That is to say, If I'm osek b'mitzvah, I'm potter min mitzvahs, except for Talmud Torah. If I'm busy learning and a mitzvah comes, I have to stop learning in order to do it, unless someone else could have done that mitzvah. And therefore, again, it's a lack of chashivus for Talmud Torah. That is to say, the second option is that you were too busy doing other mitzvahs that other people could have done, that would have been done without you. And you were running away from the base madrash in order to chase after those mitzvahs. It's not a chait that you did. You did mitzvahs. But you didn't have enough chashivas for Talmud Torah. Hence the suffering has come upon you. Okay. Option number 3 is bittul Torah shel acherim, that you caused other people to be a mevatel Torah. You asked them to help you, even though you could have done it by yourself, even though you could have found someone else who wasn't learning Torah in order to help you. And therefore, the 3 options, the first 2 on yourself, the third on other people, the Ben Yehoyada says, what does it mean, bittul Torah? It means that you didn't calibrate your life correctly in terms of the chashivas of Talmud Torah, even though you never did any sin in particular. That is the Ben Yehoyada. Fascinatingly, the Me'ira Sinayim, the Chidah, right? Interesting. The Ben Ish Chai was born in Baghdad. The Chidah was born in Yerushalayim, 1724. Fascinating. He was in Yerushalayim. Listen to what he says. He says the exact opposite pshat of the Ben Yehoyada. He says, what does it mean, bittul Torah? He asks the same question, but he gives 2 very different answers. Listen. ואפשר הכוונה יצלה בביטול תורה שהיה לו לבטל ולא ביטל. You know what we're talking about? We're talking about someone who was learning that shouldn't have been learning. He miscalibrated. There was a mitzvah שאי אפשר לעשות על ידי אחרים. There was a mitzvah that no one else could have done. And he didn't do it. He messed up. His wife needed help. He had to go be Mefarshim's family, and he wasn't taking responsibility for the things in his life. He was hiding away in the base madrash, says the Chidah, and therefore he's suffering. He says, "Inami shahayolo levatel Torah shelo yavos man kreshma," or maybe he was supposed to daven, and he wasn't. We just learned the whole sugi in brachas, but let's say he was chayiv to stop learning in order to daven. And he didn't. This is the bittul. It's not the bittul Torah that he did, it's the bittul Torah that he didn't do, says the Chidah. And therefore, very fascinatingly, that line in the Gemara is actually explained in opposite ways. It's a machlokas Sfadi Achronim between the Ben Ish Chai and the Chidah. Either way, fascinating concept, not so relevant to our pursuit of understanding suffering, but definitely a fascinating conversation about bittul Torah. When should you be mevatel Torah? When should you not be mevatel Torah? When should you take time out? And again, that push and the pull, that obviously you're chayiv to be a responsible person, but obviously you're chayiv to make sure that you're not mevatel Torah unnecessarily. It's a very difficult line to figure out. That's number 1. Number 2, just before we get to defining Yisurin Shalava, I wanted to point out the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva. Explain as follows. Why is it so difficult to judge others? Why is it so difficult to judge ourselves? Why is it so difficult to identify what the problem is? L'chor, if you open up Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Gimel, so the Rambam tells us it seems quite simple the way he begins, right? Adam she'avonotav merubim la zuchriyotav. A person who's the majority, right? His averos are more than his mitzvos. Miyad hu met b'risho, right? He just dies straight away in his rishus, in his evil. And someone who's the majority, his mitzvos are outweigh his averos, so then it's fine. So why is it so complicated to make this calculation? I guess if you sit down, you write them all up, you'll figure out who's a tzaddik, who's a rasha. Why is it so complicated to figure this out? So the answer comes in the next part of Halacha Beis. Listen up. V'shikul zeh eino lefi minyan hazchuyot v'avanot. This calculation is not a numbers game. Ela lefi godlan, Rather, it is about how great each individual mitzvah and avera is. Yesh zchut shehu keneged kama avonot. Sometimes you do one mitzvah and that outweighs a whole bunch of averas. And also v'yesh avon shehu keneged kama zchuyot. And there are also some averas that outweigh many mitzvot. Ve'ein shikulin ela b'dato shel el. And this calculation can only be done by the one who knows, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He knows how to calculate mitzvahs up against averos. And see, the reason it's so hard to calculate is because the weight of the avera and the weight of the mitzvah is what's really important. And therefore, it's almost impossible for us to make that calculation. We don't know how big mitzvahs and how big averos are. It's our responsibility, our challenge to always be trying to shoot higher, because we can never truly make the calculation. And maybe that is why when bad things happen, we begin with Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, right? We recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the calculations. He knows what he's doing down to the T. We want a world with justice. We want a world with punishment. Maybe let's digress for a minute, discuss why it's so important that this world has consequences. Obviously, there'll be a caveat that we do want Midas HaRachmim, but let's talk about Midas Hadin for a second. There are the two most common names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are, right, Shem Havaya and Shem Elokim. These are used in Bereshis Perek Aleph, Bereshis Perek Bet. And there, Rashi points out, Shem Havaya, Yud Hei Vav and Hei, is the name that expresses Midas HaRachamim. Shem Elokim expresses Midas Hadin. And therefore, Bereshis Perek Aleph only refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Elokim, right? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. It's saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world B'din, realized it wouldn't last, and therefore added in Rachamim as well. Hence, Bereshit Perek Bet talks about Hashem with Shem Havaya. The question is there any indication in these names as to why, is it arbitrary? You know, maybe it's just Halacha Moshe Sinai, that Elokim is Midas Hadin, and Shem Havaya is Midas HaRachamim. But maybe there's actually something very deep in those names that we can identify that will help us understand why it makes sense that these things are Midas Hadin or Midas HaRachamim. So it goes as follows. I had this idea from Rabbi David Aaron. He explained as follows. Shem Havaya is really the three words laid on top of each other. Right? If you write the word Haya, Hey Yud Hey, Hoveh, Hey Vav Hey, and Yihya Yud Hey, Yud Hey, and you layer them all on top of each other, you get the Shem Havaya. What's so interesting about this is that it expresses an idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is infinite. He was, and always will be. He's beyond the universe. He's the creator of the universe. He's totally beyond everything. On the other hand, Shem Elokim is in the plural. That's already interesting. What does it mean, Elokim? And okay, well, what does the word El mean? El means powerful, right? Lavan says, Yesh le'el yadi. If I have the power in my hand. And so Elokim means the master of all powers. Obviously, we're not talking about multiple gods, Chas v'shalom, but we're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is the master of all the powers in this world. From our perspective, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the master of this, and the master of that, and the sun, and the moon, and the sea, and the wind, and all of nature, and everything in the world HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the master of. And therefore, that is the name Elokim. The question is, how do these two ideas, the explanation of the meaning of the names, and the idea of Rachamim and Din match up? So it was explained to me as follows, and I think it's very accurate. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the master of the universe, he's got planets to worry about, he's got solar systems to worry about. So what do my individual actions mean? Not so much. Right? He's got the whole universe to worry about. If I don't say bracha with kavana, if I am a vatal Torah, if I watch too many movies instead of learning Torah, what does he care? He's got so much on his plate. And that is maybe that is true from the perspective of Shem Havaya. But Shem Elokim means, right, we even say Elokai, my God. Elokim is he's the power of this, and the power of this, and the power of this. He's in everything. Malah haaretz kvodo. The world is full with his glory. And therefore he touches every single spot. He is absolutely present in every single way. To say it differently, Shem Havaya is the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is omnipresent. He's beyond everything. Shem Elokim is that Hashem is immanent. He's right here with us. And when Hashem is right here with us, then our actions are very, very meaningful. In the presence of the king, we do terrible things. In the presence of the king, we don't live up to who we're supposed to be. And he's right here with us. And therefore, there are serious consequences to our actions. Judging us, having our actions be meaningful, is the highest form of respect. Right? If my child does something wrong, and I just ignore them and whatever, I just tidy up and move on, it means I don't see their actions as significant. I'm not looking to impact them. I'm not looking for them to grow, to become something. When you judge someone, not in a shitchi way, not in a shallow, I don't really know who you are. But when you say, I want to help you grow, your actions are meaningful, that is the height of respect. On the other hand, we don't live up to our potential, and then terrible things happen. And that's why there's midas harachamim. So to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to create a world which respects us, where what we do impacts the world, and therefore what we do really does impact the world. Right? I think Jordan Peterson likes to say how we're always blaming God for all these terrible things that happen. But maybe it's man-made problems. He brings an example. Katrina, that happened in America. Hurricane Katrina. So you could say, is that a force of nature or a man-made problem? Is that, humans responsible for the weather? Doesn't seem like it. And yet, the people, the politicians in that area, they were supposed to take responsibility for preparing. And in fact, they had a plan 10 years before the hurricane hit that had they applied that plan, would have saved everyone. The waters would have never broken through. But because they were lax, and because of politics, and because they got all wrapped up in their own shtiyot, I'm sure he didn't use that word, they failed to prepare properly, and the disaster hit. Our actions do have real consequences. And that is the Shem Elokim. We do want a world where our lives reflect what we have done. And therefore, it makes a whole lot of sense, Shitas Rav Ami, that the suffering in the world is brought on by us. And if you think about it, even the people that didn't do things themselves to cause the suffering, they live in a world which has been ruined by people. So to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he created the world, he created a world of bliss, Gan Eden, literally. And there, the world was perfect, it was beautiful, it was just Hana and amazing. And it was us, human beings, that brought pain and suffering into the world. And that world is the world that we live in. Right? Some things are really nice here. And Baruch Hashem, things are improving all the time. But we do live with the knowledge that the pain and suffering we have brought in as a collective. I'm going to speak a bit more about this down the line, but I just wanted to bring this in, explaining why it's so important, mi'ikaron, that we have consequences to our actions. Move on to the third question that we began today with. What is Yisurin Shel Ahava? What does that even mean? Right, Yisurin Shel Ahava. Right? Let's say I've done nothing wrong. Why do I suffer? So maybe it's be'itosh nachash, like the Gemara in Shabbos says, that I have done nothing wrong and I just live in a world that has suffering. But what's the Gemara in Brachos talking about? Yisurin shel ahava. Very difficult to understand. So if we take a look at the Pnei Yehoshua suggests two explanations about what is Yisurin shel ahava. Okay, Pirush Rashi. Rashi explains on that place in Maseches Brachos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu miyasro b'yisurim, Hashem causes this individual to suffer, v'lo shum chet v'avon. He did nothing wrong, and yet he is suffering. Kedei laharbot tzcharo b'olam haba, in order to increase his reward in the world to come. And Pnei Yehoshua is befuddled. He cannot understand this. How does it make any sense that because, even though he did nothing wrong, he did absolutely nothing wrong, he is 100% okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings suffering on this person in order to increase his world to come? He's like, how does you ever see someone who causes his friend to suffer and says, well, you're going to enjoy it in the future? How does it make any sense? Well, why would you give him more pleasure in the world, pleasure in the world to come for doing nothing, just for suffering? Like, suffering is the doorway to pleasure in the world to come. What does that even mean? And he suggests two answers. Answer number one is, there is something that challenges in life, they refine our soul. They do something to us. They refine the situation that we're in. They refine who we are. They refine our empathy, right? I remember when I was younger, 2 days before yeshiva, in fact, Shana Aleph, I broke both my arms, and I flew to England like this with casts on my arms. The altitude caused me to swell too much, and I had surgery, and I spent 3.5 weeks without use of my hands and arms. Imagine, let your imagination go wild there. It's challenging.